You stub your toe on the coffee table. You reach for the pill bottle without even thinking. Within 20 minutes, the pain fades to nothing. But for most of human history, that bottle didn't exist. And what people did instead is far stranger than you'd expect. For nearly 200,000 years, humans have broken bones, been bitten by animals, no aspirin, no morphine, no dentist's chair with a needle waiting. Just pain, raw and unfiltered, meeting a mind that had to find some way to survive it. So what did they actually do? Did they just suffer? Not exactly. They noticed things. They watched which leaves stopped bleeding faster. They watched which bark, chewed slowly, seemed to dull a fever's edge. This wasn't medicine as you'd recognize it. It was trial and memory, passed down for generations. And some of it worked shockingly well. Start with the Neanderthals. For decades, they were imagined as brutish and simple, dragging themselves through an existence with no comfort at all. Then, researchers began looking closely at their teeth. Dental plaque, it turns out, is a time capsule. It traps tiny fragments of whatever a person chewed, sometimes for tens of thousands of years. Archaeologist Karen Hardy examined the calcified plaque on Neanderthal teeth found in Spain. Inside, she found traces of chamomile and yarrow. Both plants taste bitter. Neither is particularly nutritious, so why would anyone eat them? The most likely answer is that Neanderthals weren't eating them for taste at all. They were eating them because they made pain and sickness more bearable. Chamomile calms inflammation. Yarrow slows bleeding and has been used for wound care in nearly every culture that encountered it since. A creature we once imagined as barely conscious was apparently self-medicating. Think about what that means. It means somewhere in the deep, foggy history, before written language, before agriculture, before anything we'd call civilization, a Neanderthal was in pain and chose a specific plant on purpose to make it stop. That single fact rewrites the picture. This wasn't an animal enduring its condition. This was a mind actively problem-solving against suffering. Now, travel forward into the world of early Homo sapiens, and the evidence gets even stranger. Willow bark shows up across dozens of ancient sites, from Europe to the Near East. If that name sounds familiar, it should. Willow bark contains a compound called salicin. Your body converts salicin into salicylic acid, and salicylic acid is the active ingredient your body eventually recognizes as aspirin. Ancient people had no idea what a compound was. They had no idea what inflammation looked like on a cellular level. But they knew that chewing this specific bark from this specific tree made a headache fade and a fever break. They didn't need the biochemistry. They only needed the outcome, observed and repeated, until it became knowledge worth keeping. But plants could only do so much. What happened when the pain was structural? A broken leg, an infected tooth, a skull cracked open by a fall or a fight. Here is where the story turns from strange to almost unbelievable. Archaeologists have found skulls, thousands of them, from sites in Peru, France, and beyond, with neat, deliberate holes cut into the bone. This procedure is called trepanation, and it is quite simply ancient brain surgery. Anthropologist John Verano has spent decades studying trepanned skulls from ancient Peru. What he found wasn't just the presence of the holes, it was the evidence of healing around them. Bone regrows in a specific pattern after surgery, and in a striking number of skulls, that regrowth is visible. That means the patient didn't die on the table, they survived. Sometimes they survived long enough for the wound to heal completely, which means they may have undergone the procedure more than once. Why would ancient people cut into a living human skull? For head trauma, it may have relieved swelling and pressure, something modern neurosurgeons still do today in extreme cases. For seizures or severe headaches, it may have been believed to release whatever unseen force was causing the pain. Either way, someone had to hold the patient down. Someone had to press a sharpened stone or obsidian blade into a living scalp and cut, slowly, while the person underneath was almost certainly awake. How did they survive the pain of that? This is where the story gets genuinely surprising, because pain relief wasn't only chemical, it was social. Evolutionary psychologist Robin Dunbar has spent years studying the biology of human bonding, and one of his most striking findings involves endorphins, the brain's own natural painkillers. Dunbar's research shows that certain shared, rhythmic, often painful activities trigger a flood of endorphins, not just in the person experiencing the sensation, but across an entire group performing it together. Group dancing, synchronized drumming, ritual scarification, where cuts are made into skin as part of a coming-of-age ceremony. All of these involve real physical pain, and all of them, according to Dunbar's work, seem to unlock a natural opioid response strong enough to blunt that pain and bond the group tightly together in the process. This means the earliest form of pain management wasn't a pill, it was a room full of people, chanting or drumming in rhythm, generating a biochemical response inside each other's bodies that a modern hospital would need a syringe to replicate. Pain, shared, became slightly more bearable. Pain witnessed by a community became meaningful instead of just cruel. Even childbirth, arguably the most intense pain a human body regularly endures, was rarely faced alone. Across nearly every traditional society ever studied, women in labor were surrounded by other women, chanting, holding, rocking. Some of that was practical support, but some of it, according to modern research on social bonding and endorphin release, was doing real biochemical work, dulling the sharpest edges of the experience through presence alone. There's a pattern hiding underneath all of this. Ancient humans had no concept of neurotransmitters. They didn't know what a nerve ending was, but they had built, through pure observation and repetition, an entire toolkit for managing pain. Plants that reduced inflammation, bark that lowered fever, surgery that relieved pressure on the brain, and rituals that flooded the body with its own natural relief. None of it was random. All of it was learned the hard way, tested on real bodies, and passed forward because it worked often enough to matter. This is easy to forget now, in a world where relief comes from a small plastic bottle on a shelf. You don't have to chew bitter bark. You don't have to gather your community into a drumming circle just to dull a headache. But the instinct underneath all of it, the refusal to simply accept suffering as final, is exactly the same instinct that sent someone 20,000 years ago looking for a specific leaf on a specific tree. Every time you reach for a painkiller without a second thought, you're finishing a project that started long before written history. Someone, somewhere, decided pain wasn't something to just endure, and that decision, made over and over across thousands of generations, is the quiet reason your headache disappears in 20 minutes instead of lasting all day. So the next time you stub your toe on that coffee table and you reach for the bottle without even thinking, remember what you're actually holding. It isn't just a pill. It's the answer to a question ancient humans spent 200,000 years trying to solve.